Ya hey ya ya hey oy. Ya hey ya ya hey oy. Ya hey ya ya hey ya. Ya hey ya ya hey oy. Ya hey ya.
Good evening. Welcome to Native Wavelength. I am Dr. Tane Ward, in for Fox RedSky, and our host today, our guest today is Fox RedSky, who is an Inde Lipan Apache local filmmaker, television host, and organizer based here in Austin, Texas. And recently, her first film, Keep the Fires Lit, The Lost Tribes of Texas, has been accepted to multiple film festivals and doing quite well on the circuit. Welcome to your own show today, Fox.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tony Ward. I appreciate you a whole lot doing this.
Absolutely, and I appreciate all the work you've been doing. So let's talk about this film. How many festivals has it been accepted to? What's the reception been like? And what are the main takeaways from your experience in making this film and putting it out there for the international audience?
So Keep the Fire Lit, Lost Tribes of Texas is my giveaway to the people. You know, I came starting into this with very little experience, with very little, it was a journey, to say the least. And I was caring for a little child, an infant at the time. So it was just all, coming from my heart, from spirit, and I just wanted to see this done. I wanted to see our people acknowledged and validated, and I had tried to get other people to take the idea and run with it, but a lot of people, I didn't realize how much. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but to bring you up to speed, 3.5 years later, from going from knowing nothing to I'm feeling very confident now and feeling really, really good at what I'm doing. We've been accepted into 25 different film festivals. Wow. And we have won one award.
All right.
We've been in all over Europe and parts of South America and Mexico and the United States. And so, I think that my takeaway from this is that it's time for the Texas tribes to be heard. And I hope that there are many more films that acknowledge the tribes here, acknowledge that there is and was still people and indigenous people here and tribes here that have been here for thousands of years.
Right. And what's the reception been like in places like Europe? Are people surprised to hear that there are indigenous peoples in Texas? Or what in the film seems to stand out for these international audiences?
I think that there is such a curiosity about Texas, and it's always just, you think of cowboys, so to hear about the tribes and I think it right now too, especially after Standing Rock, there's just been this rallying call for indigenous people everywhere. So I think it's like the collective consciousness is speaking to the heart of humanity, which is, let us take care of these indigenous people, and if we can raise them up, then somehow we will all rise together.
Absolutely. And so you were making this film, as you say, over the last 3 years, and Standing Rock, of course, started in 2016. How do you think that popularized movement affected the way that you made the film and the way that people received it?
So I started it, looking for funds and things like that in December of 2015. And I believe the movement started happening in February and March of 2016. So I feel like it was just something that was just colliding together. But as I was filming the Carrizo Como Crudo tribe of Texas, which has a big part in that film, they were heading out to Standing Rock. So it was just like all of a sudden the film started, Standing Rock kind of took the film to Keep the Fire Lit to Standing Rock. So there's a beautiful, and I got to film that. There's a beautiful part of the middle of the film where we are seeing that play out and how it was just a coalition of all these beautiful tribes coming together to stand and fight for clean water and for the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. So
this is an important thing. Do you think that being Native signifies a particular politics or something that people would assume that, for example, indigenous peoples are for protecting the environment and this sort of thing. Is there something that's unique in Texas that we should know about indigenous culture that helps us understand these types of politics in a place that's producing a lot of oil and gas, for example? Or do you see that there's quite a broad diversity of indigenous peoples here that have all sorts of beliefs about extraction and pipelines and these sorts of things?
You know, I feel that because of colonialism and because of the effects of genocide, which after genocide happens, and the next step is erasure, because we don't want to see the bad thing that we did, right? We want to forget about it. And so a lot of people with indigenous roots and from native tribes have kind of been meant to feel like second-class citizens or lower than themselves. So they've done a lot of things to try to kind of to participate in the dominant narrative or the dominant culture because they want to be accepted, and who wants to be treated less than? So I think that, you know, everyone can see, you know, what doesn't matter what side you're on, left or right or brown or black or whatever, white or black. You know, when you're hurting the earth, and that's going to affect the next 7 generations. That's going to affect your children and whether or not they're going to be. So I think that's a very good question.
So do you consider your film a political film?
It definitely is a political film. It is definitely a political film.
And what are these politics then that you're trying to get across in this movie?
Well, you know, I think I was learning it as I was filming, you know, and that is that these developments that are happening with oil and gas or whatever, are mostly affecting minority communities. The lands are going to be polluted. Their homes are, you know, their places, they're going to be the ones that are going to be displaced and dislocated. And so whether I wanted it to or not, it was just a reoccurring theme that just happened again and again and again. It wasn't like I was trying to seek that out. It found me in every person that I interviewed.
Yeah. Well, you must have discovered a lot through your process, and I'd love to hear more about what your process was. But one of the things that I'm curious about is this idea of identity and indigenous identity specifically, and this exists in different ways in different parts of the world. Colonialism happened differently to different types of people in different ways, and there's certainly a great variety in terms of the histories and the ways that people identify as native. What were some of the interesting things you found in Texas in terms of the way that people identify as being indigenous or native or Chicano or other things? Is there a strong idea that people are sort of rallying around of what it means to be indigenous? Is this a contested idea? Is there a lot of different ideas about what it means to be indigenous?
You know, in the film Keep the Fire Lit, Lost Tribes of Texas, I interviewed one of my elders, Rodolfo Ramirez Munoz, and he said it eloquently. Back in the 30, 40 years ago, when a Mexica dancer, an Azteca dancer, Toltec dancer went to a powwow, say like in New Mexico, they weren't the right kind of Indian. So there is a lot of dividing politics in terms of being able to claim that part of you. And, you know, I know that there's some people that are almost afraid to claim that part of them. And so, you know, because of the politics in regard to that, but I think it's becoming less and less. And that's at least what I was hearing from the elders, you know, that have, you know, that are in their 70s and 80s, you know, like what's been transpiring. You know, we don't have to experience that same thing necessarily, but it's still there. The residue of it is still there, I think. But overall, personally, what I witnessed was people kind of embracing their heritage and acknowledging that, and kind of restore. It was a restoration process that was going on, instead of kind of being a part of that dominant narrative and trying to assimilate and trying to be white. It was more like, let's learn what these words mean. Let's learn what this what was lost, kind of a recovering what was lost. And
right. It certainly seems like more and more people are identifying as indigenous that may not have identified as indigenous in the past. Is there a shortcoming to that, or is this generally, you think, a positive thing?
No, I think that it's definitely a positive thing, you know, because I know from my own family's personal experiences, what they've shared with me, it was a very shameful thing to even acknowledge that, you know. And I personally was picked on quite a bit in school, you know, to be, you know, to even acknowledge that Native blood inside of you. So I think that anything that's honoring, you can't, it's just like you know, you can't, you know, in Texas it's special because it's a mixture of Spanish and Native, so mestizo. But you can't deny, just like you can't deny one line of your lineage, you can't deny the other.
Right.
You know, so it's about honoring both of them, especially when it ties you to the land that you're walking on.
Absolutely. So, as you were making this film, what was your process? You say that you, at the beginning, didn't know how to make a movie, and I guess you learned along the way. So, what was it like? How did you set off to start, and what did you learn by the end in terms of the process?
It's a lot of work. you know, I thought, oh, this will be easy, you know, and you know, 3.5 years later, no, it was, you know, because I think I was so driven by all of the, you know, well, first of all, it was really initiated by the Native American church and my experiences with the medicine. And I really feel like all of the stories that I was listening from my elders in the Native American church made me feel a very strong, like there's injustices happening here. There's a story that's not being told here. And so in a way, you know, that was kind of the catalyst for that. But, you know, I learned a lot about how to raise money for a film and how and what it means to put a production schedule together and what it means to, you know, to actually make a film on a high quality level that requires time, energy, money, all that stuff. And then of course there's post-production, which is, you know, how do you take all of this footage that you've taken now and really create an arcing story that's connected and that's going to, you know, bring everything into a culmination, and so that you can, you know, leave on that, you know, on a good note. And I had big hopes. You know, I you know, the budget, if I had gotten even twice as much as what I was able to raise, I probably would have made, you know, we would have more funds, we'd have been able to go to more places, but I feel like there's a lot of the story that I didn't get to tell.
So, I mean, I think storytelling is really beautiful, and it sounds like you're venturing off in other ways of telling stories. What is the story of the peoples of Texas? When you're making this film, what's the most simple narrative that you think people are going to get out of this movie?
A validation of the people, and the heart of the people is still connected to the land.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there may be some severing of cultural and identity ties, but the people are still connected to this land, and they love this land, and they will defend this land.
Absolutely. And
I also feel that they were going to see that that there is a beautiful renaissance happening with the tribes here.
That's great. You mentioned the Native American church and some spiritual work you did that got you to make this movie. How much was this spirituality and this religious practice a part of the practice of making this film? Were you using elements of prayer and spirituality in order to make certain decisions in this filmmaking?
Well, I would say yes. I would say yes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I would say yeah.
And I want to ask you a follow-up question to that, which is this a native film in the sense of that it's made using techniques that you feel are rooted in native lifeways, and therefore different from other types of movies?
Well, it was also about having permissions and not crossing boundaries, and letting the people who this film is, you know, have a say. Like, what do they want? That was my main question when I interviewed people was, what do you want this movie to be about? How do you want your people to be seen? And so I already had, you know, in the back of my mind, because I know a lot of these people and I've known them for, you know, a decade or more, or most of my life, you know, so there's definitely a personal kinship with some of the people in this film. They had a big, huge influence on, like, you know, I knew them when I was a teenager, and they helped me kind of like blossom into the person that I am. But so in that way, I kind of already knew their backstory and you know, I knew what questions to ask because they're my community, they're my people.
Absolutely.
but I wanted this to be their film.
Right. And what advice would you give a native filmmaker who wants to make a film and use their life ways as a guide? What advice would you give from what you learned from Keep the Fires Lit?
I would say just follow your heart and just, keep at it. And when you have naysayers or you have people that might be like, oh no, you should do it this way or you should do it that way, trust yourself. Because I had that same process happen where like everybody wanted to give their opinions. Of course, they didn't want to put the work in, but and at the end of the day, you're the one putting the work in. You're the one putting the time and the energy and the money. So, do what make sure it's your vision. Don't let someone take your vision away from you. And I can say this: the title "Keep the Fire Lit." I asked in a ceremony. My answers, I was like, what should I do? Like, what is it you want me to do with this film? And the response that I got from that spirit was, all you have to do is just keep that fire lit. That's all you gotta do.
Beautiful.
So.
And tell me, what was the most, you said there was maybe some naysayers at certain points of time, which is pretty easy to believe, in making any sort of project, and specifically something around Indigenous peoples. What was the most challenging aspect of making this film? Was there elements that brought you doubt that were difficult to overcome?
Well, I know a lot of people didn't like the second part of the title, which is Lost Tribes of Texas, because they're like, we're not lost. But I was thinking from a perspective of somebody who's non-native, that maybe overseas, that's like, oh, they'll see Keep the Fire Lit, they might think, what is this about? But if they see Lost Tribes of Texas, they'll be like, oh, I want to see that. And so I guess, I think the thing that was the thing that kind of broke my heart was that there is division in kind of the community. I mean, it's in every community. And so, like, there would be one group of people, and I'm not a gossiper, but there'll be one group saying, don't talk to these people, don't talk to that so-and-so, or another group would be like, don't talk to so-and-so. And so I was kind of disheartened because there wasn't as much unity as I'd like to see. So that was, like, the hardest thing was, like, everyone kind of like, there is still some bad blood in different areas of the community, and I'm still such a young, compared to them, I'm a young buck, and there might be a feud that's like 30, 40 years old, so. And I, of course, didn't want that to come across in my film. But. Right,
of course not. So how did you overcome that? Did you end up speaking to everyone, or were there certain people you stayed away from, or what did you do?
I didn't let that be a bias towards me. I just kind of, it's all about lining your schedule up. So it was just like when I ran out of money and when people's schedule didn't line up, those are the ones that didn't get picked. It was just like kind of like the luck of the draw kind of thing, more than like, oh, so-and-so said not to talk to that person, so I'm going to turn and go this way.
Mm-hmm. You didn't let that deter you?
No. Because, I mean, people are going to talk, and my grandfather used to say there's hearsay, which is like something you heard someone else say, and then there's some seeing it for your own self. So I always try to realize that there's going to be hearsay.
And do you think that this film offers opportunities for healing some of these divisions that exist in the community? And if so, how would that do that?
I think it will, because, I'm a woman and I'm a mother. And so this is a film from the heart. You know what I mean? And so I tried to show all the most beautiful parts. That I try to see it from my vision, which is I see everybody as beautiful, and this life is beautiful. And so I guess when we put away all our bickering or envy or jealousy, in the end, we have this very short life, and it's just here for a blink. And so I think that that definitely came across in the film, was that, we got to come together. We have to unite.
Beautiful. And is there anything that gives you particular hope in people coming together and uniting these days in Texas or beyond? Well,
another one of my mini projects is with my own people, which the Nende people. We, at the very end of the film, we had an Apache gathering that hadn't happened in 150 years. over across the border on the Rio Grande. And since that filming, we've had 5 more.
Awesome.
And each one keeps getting bigger, and each one we become closer and closer together. And so in that instance, I guess, there it is. That's the example.
That's beautiful. And what other projects have you been working on since Keep the Fires Lit? You've wrapped up production, and you have, of course, have these film screenings happening all over the world. But what have you been working on with your creative energy?
There's a long list.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm trying to do is, because I really believe in this, is a sustainable model of being, is lifting each other up. And so in my workings and my dealings making the film, I met other filmmakers, and so I was like, I want your movie to be seen. Somebody, that sounds so awesome. So I'm creating, and the founder of a film festival here in Austin, Texas, called the Turtle Island Arts Festival, which will be the last weekend of South by Southwest at the Mexican American Cultural Center. And I've gathered Native people from all around Texas to kind of work together to create a platform for musicians and filmmakers to be acknowledged, to have our films shown, and just to like hallmark this time we're going through as we have this awakening.
Beautiful. Now, are these filmmakers all from Texas?
No, they're from Turtle Island.
Okay.
They're from Canada, Mexico, and the United States.
Awesome. So you're working on this upcoming film festival. Anything else?
We're on my other project right now, which is Native Wavelength, and then I have a sister show called La Onda Nativa, which is because for me, as someone who is indigenous to Texas, you are only having half the we had so many people colonize us. We had Spanish, we had French, we had German, and so you're only having half the conversation if it's not in Spanish, because we have a lot of our indigenous people in Mexico and in Texas are Spanish speaking. It's just the way it is. Okay. And so we need to include them in that conversation. And so I have created those 2 television shows.
Awesome.
And I'm also trying to work directly with, as a liaison to the Apache tribe, or the Apache people in Mexico. And yeah.
Awesome. And what are the main issues affecting Apache peoples in Mexico and in the United States?
Resources. Resources, whether I'm talking to my sister on the reservation in Jicarilla Apache, or whether I'm talking to my brother in Saltillo, Saltillo, Coahuila. It's resources. Our people have been used as slaves. Our people have been used as the backbone of a lot of industry and have not received any kind of real economic power or economic lift, and so we're poor people, and so that's definitely the main issue. I think all the other issues are just tied to that one. If we had money, we could put internet on the reservation. If we had money, we could, and another one too I would like to point out. Another issue is being able to cross the border back and forth, because we do have family, and we do have Apaches over in Mexico, and they have a difficult time. They can't come over here, and that's our family. That's part of our tribe. That not being able to have our citizens is taking away our sovereignty, and it's basically dictating what we should do with our own people. So. Those are the 2 issues I think that resonate, and that I see.
Do you have any idea for addressing the economic issue or this border issue?
Well, one of my ideas is to create our own currency. Cryptocurrency, I know, has a lot of mixed reviews and so forth, but I would like to create our own currency. In terms of the border issue, we should be able to. I don't know, we could maybe petition a senator or congressman, or maybe talk to, to figure out a way to be able to have, easy back and forth across the border. I don't know. Those are very important questions, and I would like to hear any answers from anyone else at the table. I know I don't have them all.
Well, it sounds like these gatherings you're having amongst all of the tribal peoples there are good spaces to start, and maybe that's a place where some of the ideas can come from. Is there anything else you'd like to leave viewers with as your guest today?
I just want to let everyone know who's listening to Native Wavelength that this is a platform and a television show for the people. It is for the tribes of Turtle Island, and I really see Turtle Island as that North America place. That's what we used to call it. That we saw. We weren't one. We were all one. So I hope y'all look forward to. I want y'all to see many more awesome shows where we highlight Indigenous artists, Indigenous filmmakers, Indigenous activists, and highlight all these issues, because I really feel that the more we have these conversations, the more that we cross-pollinate, and the more that we talk about these issues, the more we can, and see that we have the same issues over and over, the more we can find those solutions like we're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to watching the show more and getting to those solutions. Thank you very much to our guest, Fox RedSky. I'm Tane Ward, in for Fox RedSky. You're watching Native Wavelength, the station for First Nation.
Ya, ya, hey, ya, ya, hey.